The smell of burnt plastic lingered on my fingers as I stood frozen in my cramped bathroom, watching the last bits of the pregnancy test curl and blacken in the sink. My hands trembled as I turned on the faucet, hoping the evidence would disappear down the drain. The water hissed against the hot plastic, sending up a wisp of acrid smoke that made my eyes water. Or maybe those were just tears. I couldn't tell anymore. 3 minutes earlier, I'd stared at those 2 pink lines with a hollow feeling spreading through my chest like ice water. Positive. How could one little word hold so much power? I'd lit the pregnancy test with a shaking hand, watching the flame lick at the plastic, desperate to make the reality disappear along with the evidence. My tiny apartment felt even smaller tonight, the walls pressing in from all sides. Outside, rain pelted against my single window, the drops racing down the glass like they were trying to escape. I wished I could escape too, from this city, from my mistakes, from him. I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale face, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. 8 months ago, I'd been just another struggling waitress with dreams of finishing college someday. Now I was pregnant with a child whose father didn't know I existed. Not really. To Dominic Russo, I was nothing. A one-night stand, collateral damage in his glittering, dangerous world. The bathroom light flickered, casting shadows across my face. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach, trying to process the reality growing inside me. A child. His child. My phone buzzed on the counter, making me jump. A text from Lena, my roommate, and only real friend in this city. You okay? You've been in there forever. I quickly typed back, fine, just not feeling great. How could I tell her? Lena had warned me about the men who frequented Velvet, the upscale club where we both worked. Look, but don't touch, she'd said on my first night, especially the ones who come in with entourages. They're not the kind of men who want girls like us for anything more than entertainment. But Dominic hadn't seemed like the others. He'd been quiet, observant. While his associates had gotten drunk and rowdy, he'd sat back, nursing a single glass of whiskey. His eyes had followed me as I moved between tables, and when he'd asked my name, his voice had been soft, almost gentle. Not at all what I'd expected from a man who made other people tremble with just a glance. I hadn't known who he was that night. I'd just seen a handsome man with sad eyes who'd made me feel like I mattered. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to pull myself together. Dominic Russo. Even thinking his name sent a chill down my spine now that I knew the truth. Head of the Russo crime family. A man who controlled half the city through fear and blood. The rumors about him were the stuff of nightmares. They said he'd once had a man's fingers cut off one by one for stealing from him. That people who crossed him simply disappeared. That he kept a list of everyone who had ever wronged him and methodically destroyed them, one by one. And I was carrying his child. I stepped out of the bathroom, my legs unsteady. Our apartment was small, just a living room connected to a kitchenette, with 2 tiny bedrooms off to the side. Lena sat on our threadbare couch, the blue light of the TV washing over her concerned face. "You look like hell," she said, muting the reality show she'd been watching. "Thanks," I mumbled, sinking down beside her. "Seriously, Emma, what's going on? You've been off for weeks now." She turned to face me, tucking her legs under her. "Is it about that guy from Velvet? The one you wouldn't tell me about?" My throat tightened. "I don't want to talk about it." "You never do." Lena sighed, reaching for my hand. "Whatever happened, you can tell me." The words burned in my throat. I wanted to tell her everything, how I'd spent one night with Dominic Russo, and then vanished from his life before morning. How I'd later overheard his men at the club discussing a business deal that made my blood run cold, finally realizing who he really was. How I'd been avoiding his section of the club ever since, switching shifts and hiding in the back whenever his entourage came in. Instead, I squeezed her hand and forced a smile. "It's just stress. Finals are coming up and I'm behind on rent again." Lena didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Well, you might be in luck. Marcus is looking for someone to cover VIP sections tomorrow night. Double the tips." My stomach lurched. VIP? I can't, Lena. Why not? You've been dodging the high rollers for months. I know they can be handsy, but the money's good. She frowned. Unless there's something you're not telling me. The moment stretched between us, taut with unspoken truths. I could feel the weight of the secret inside me, growing heavier by the second, but telling Lena would only put her in danger too. Fine, I said finally. I'll take the shift. Relief washed over her face. Good. Because I already told him you would. Before I could protest, a sharp knock cut through our conversation. 3 hard raps that made the thin door rattle in its frame. Lena and I exchanged glances. It was nearly midnight, and we weren't expecting anyone. She stood up, moving cautiously to the door, while I remained frozen on the couch, my heart suddenly pounding. Who is it? Lena called, her hand hovering over the lock. Delivery for Emma Clark. The voice was deep, unfamiliar. At midnight? Lena whispered back to me, eyebrows raised. I shook my head, a creeping dread sliding down my spine. I hadn't ordered anything, and few people knew my full name, let alone my address. Lena peered through the peephole, then stepped back. There's a guy in a suit out there, looks expensive. She turned to me, her expression a mix of confusion and wariness. Should I tell him to leave it at the door? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Open the door, Emma. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the message, unable to breathe. How did they find me? Another text followed. You've been avoiding me. We need to talk. Emma? Lena's voice seemed to come from far away. What's going on? I rose on shaky legs, moving toward the door like a sleepwalker. I'll handle it. Lena caught my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin. Do you know who that is? Because you look like you've seen a ghost. It's fine, I lied, gently pulling away. Just go to your room, okay? Please. She hesitated, studying my face. If you're in trouble, I'm not. I just need to deal with this alone. After a long moment, Lena nodded and disappeared into her bedroom, though she left the door cracked open. I waited until I heard her bed creak before approaching the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't open it. What do you want? I called through the wood. You know what I want. The voice was different now, low, smooth, and terrifyingly familiar, not some random delivery man. Him. I pressed my forehead against the door, closing my eyes. Go away, Dominic. Open the door, Emma. His voice was soft, but I could hear the steel beneath it. Or I will. The threat hung in the air between us. I knew it wasn't empty. A man like Dominic Russo didn't make empty threats. With trembling fingers, I turned the deadbolt and cracked the door open, keeping the chain in place. Through the narrow gap, I could see him. Tall and imposing in a tailored black suit, his dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a Renaissance painting. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, and eyes the color of midnight. Beautiful and deadly. He wasn't alone. A hulking figure stood a few paces behind him. One of his bodyguards, no doubt. The man's jacket bulged in a way that told me he was armed. What do you want? I repeated, fighting to keep my voice steady. Dominic's eyes swept over what little he could see of me through the gap, lingering on my face. You disappeared. There was an accusation in his tone, but something else too. Something that made my chest tighten. Why? I don't owe you an explanation. I gripped the edge of the door so hard my knuckles turned white. It was one night. Was it? He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Then why have you been hiding from me, switching shifts when I come in, ducking into back rooms? So he had noticed. Of course he had. Dominic Russo noticed everything. It was how he stayed alive in his world. I know who you are now, I whispered. A flicker of something, resignation, perhaps, crossed his face. And that frightened you. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something he already knew. We need to talk, Emma. Not through a door. We have nothing to talk about. Even as I said it, I felt the weight of the lie heavy on my tongue. The secret inside me seemed to pulse with each beat of my heart, his child. Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly. I think we do. He reached into his jacket and I flinched instinctively, but he only pulled out a small velvet box. You left something behind. I stared at the box, confused. I hadn't left anything at his penthouse that night. I'd been careful, slipping out while he was asleep, taking nothing. Leaving nothing. I don't understand. Open the door, Emma. His voice had softened, but the command was still there. Please. That please undid me. It sounded so out of place coming from him. A man who never had to ask for anything, who simply took what he wanted. Before I could reconsider, I closed the door, unhooked the chain, and opened it again. Dominic stepped inside, his presence immediately filling our small apartment. Up close, he was even more devastating. The subtle scent of his cologne, the perfect fit of his suit, the controlled power in his movements. His bodyguard remained in the hallway, taking up position outside our door. You shouldn't be here, I said, wrapping my arms around myself, suddenly aware of my threadbare leggings and oversized t-shirt. And yet, here I am. His gaze traveled around our apartment, taking in the second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, the textbooks stacked on the coffee table. I felt exposed, vulnerable. This man lived in a penthouse with views of the entire city. My entire apartment could fit in his closet. He turned back to me, holding out the velvet box. This is yours. I didn't take it. No, it's not. I didn't leave anything with you. It was my mother's. He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold bracelet with a small diamond pendant. I want you to have it. I took a step back. Why would you give me something like that? His eyes met mine, intense and unreadable. Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. A harsh laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Different? Is that what you tell all your one-night stands? Something dangerous flashed across his face. You weren't a one-night stand, Emma, then what was I? The words came out sharper than I intended. Another conquest? A distraction? You were... He stopped, his jaw tightening. For a moment, he looked almost... vulnerable. But that couldn't be right. Men like Dominic Russo didn't do vulnerable. You were supposed to be there when I woke up. The accusation hung between us. I swallowed hard, fighting the unexpected guilt that rose in my throat. I couldn't stay. Why? He took a step closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head up to meet his gaze. What changed between when you fell asleep in my arms and when you decided to disappear? The memory of that night washed over me. The feel of his hands, gentle despite their strength. The way he'd looked at me like I was precious. How safe I'd felt falling asleep beside him. And then the crushing realization at dawn when I'd seen the gun on his nightstand, the burner phones, the whispered call he'd taken in the middle of the night that had woken me. The pieces had started to fall into place, and with them, my illusions had crumbled. I heard things, I said finally, at the club, about who you really are, what you do. Understanding dawned in his eyes. And you were afraid. Of course I was afraid. I lowered my voice, conscious of Lena in the other room. You're Dominic Russo. People disappear because of you. They end up in the river. He didn't deny it. Instead, he closed the jewelry box and slipped it back into his pocket. If I wanted to hurt you, Emma, I wouldn't have waited 2 months to find you. The words sent a chill down my spine. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand that whatever you think you know about me, you don't know everything. His voice was soft, but there was an edge to it now. And you certainly don't know what you are to me. Before I could respond, the bathroom door creaked. I turned, startled, to see it drifting open slightly. The air conditioning, probably, but Dominic's attention had already shifted. His eyes fixed on something inside the bathroom, and he moved past me with the silent grace of a predator. I lunged after him, but he was already through the door. Dominic, don't. Too late. He stood in my tiny bathroom, staring at the sink where the remains of the pregnancy test still sat, partially melted but unmistakable. The test window was scorched, but the result was still visible through the bubbled plastic. 2 pink lines. Positive. Time seemed to stop as he turned to face me, his expression unreadable. Is this what you've been hiding from me? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My secret, the one I'd been desperate to keep, lay exposed between us. All I could do was nod, a single tear escaping down my cheek. Dominic's face transformed in that moment, shock giving way to something else entirely, something raw and vulnerable that I never expected to see from him. He crossed the small space between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to cradle my face with unexpected gentleness. "You're carrying my child," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, and to my utter shock, I saw tears glistening in his eyes. My child. The last of my defenses crumbled as I saw something I never expected from the most feared man in the city: hope. Time suspended itself in that cramped bathroom as Dominic's words echoed against the tile walls. My child. The tenderness in his voice contradicted everything I thought I knew about him. This was a man who commanded fear with a single glance, whose name was whispered in dark corners of the city. Yet here he stood, vulnerable and raw, tears gathering in his eyes as he looked at the evidence of our shared future. I stepped backward until my shoulders hit the wall, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze. "This wasn't supposed to happen," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of the rain battering the window. "You weren't supposed to find out." His expression darkened, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "You were going to keep this from me, my own child?" "I didn't think you'd care," I admitted, wrapping my arms protectively around my middle. "Men like you don't want complications." "Men like me?" His voice was dangerously soft now. "And what kind of man do you think I am, Emma?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications. What kind of man was Dominic Russo? A criminal, a killer, a man whose empire was built on fear and violence, but also a man who had looked at me like I was precious, who had just revealed more emotion over an unborn child than I ever thought possible. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "and that's what terrifies me." He moved closer, backing me against the wall, one hand braced beside my head. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the subtle notes of his cologne mingling with the lingering scent of burnt plastic. My heart hammered against my ribs as he leaned in, his lips inches from my ear. "Let me tell you what kind of man I am, Emma," he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. "I'm the kind who protects what's his, the kind who never abandons his family, the kind who would burn this entire city to the ground before letting anyone harm what belongs to him." A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from fear. "I don't belong to you." His eyes met mine, midnight dark and impossibly deep. "No," he agreed softly, "but our child does, and so do you, whether you've accepted it yet or not." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it awakened something primal and unexpected within me. A longing for protection, for belonging. I'd been alone for so long, fighting for every scrap of security in a world that seemed determined to knock me down. The promise of safety, of never having to struggle alone again, was intoxicating. "Dominic," I started, not knowing what I wanted to say. A soft knock at the bathroom door interrupted us. "Emma?" Lena's voice came through, tight with concern. "Is everything okay in there?" Dominic's eyes never left mine as he called out, "We're fine. Give us a minute." I heard Lena's sharp intake of breath at the male voice answering from my bathroom. "Emma, do you need help?" The question carried a clear message. Say the word, and she'd call for help. "I'm okay, Lena," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just give us some privacy, please." There was a moment of hesitation before I heard her reluctant footsteps retreating. Dominic stepped back slightly, giving me room to breathe. "Pack your things," he said quietly. My eyes widened. "What?" "Pack your things," he repeated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "You're coming with me." Panic fluttered in my chest. "I can't just leave." "You can, and you will." His expression softened marginally at the fear in my eyes. "Emma, I'm not asking you to disappear. I'm asking you to come to my home where I can protect you, where I can take care of you and our child." "I have classes," I protested weakly. "Work. Finals next week. All of which can be arranged from my penthouse." He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear with unexpected gentleness. I'm not trying to imprison you, Emma. I'm trying to keep you safe. Safe from what? I challenged. His expression darkened. My world isn't without enemies. If they discover you're carrying my child, you become a target. The reality of his words sank into me like lead weights. Of course, a child, an heir, would be a vulnerability in his world. A way to control him, to hurt him. I wasn't just carrying a baby, I was carrying a potential hostage. This is why I didn't tell you, I whispered, fresh tears welling in my eyes. Your world. It's too dangerous. I can't raise a child in that. Something like pain flashed across his features. You think I'd let any harm come to either of you? He shook his head, jaw tightening. No one will touch you. No one will even know you exist until I've ensured your absolute safety. And what about after? I asked, forcing myself to meet his gaze. What happens when the baby is born? Do we live in hiding forever, in a golden cage? Dominic was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. What do you want, Emma? Tell me what you need to feel secure, and I'll make it happen. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I'd expected orders, demands, perhaps even threats, not this willingness to negotiate, to accommodate my fears. My voice faltered as I realized I didn't know what I wanted. A normal life? That had vanished the moment those 2 pink lines appeared. Safety? Dominic was offering that, albeit on his terms. Freedom? Could that even exist now, with a child tying me to this man forever? A soft knock at the front door interrupted my thoughts. Dominic tensed, his hand moving instinctively to his side where I suspected a weapon was concealed. Boss. A deep voice called through the door, his bodyguard. We need to move, now. The urgency in the man's tone sent a chill through me. Dominic's expression hardened as he took my arm, guiding me out of the bathroom. What's happening? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Nothing you need to worry about, he replied, but the tightness around his eyes told me otherwise. He led me to my bedroom, closing the door behind us. Pack what you need, essentials only. My hands trembled as I pulled my duffel bag from under the bed. Dominic, you're scaring me. He paused, cupping my face in his hands. I won't let anything happen to you or our child, but we need to leave. Now. The intensity in his eyes brooked no argument. I nodded, turning to my dresser and pulling out clothes at random, stuffing them into the bag. Dominic moved to the window, peering out at the street below, his posture tense. Faster, he urged quietly. I grabbed my laptop, chargers, textbooks, and the small jewelry box that contained the few pieces I'd inherited from my mother. As I zipped the bag closed, Dominic's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening further. Time's up, he said, taking the bag from my hands and slinging it over his shoulder. He opened my bedroom door to find Lena standing there, arms crossed, her face a mask of worry and suspicion. Emma, what the hell is going on? She demanded, her eyes flicking from me to Dominic. Lena, I know who he is. She cut me off, her voice tight with fear. Everyone at Velvet knows who Dominic Russo is. What I don't know is why you're packing a bag at midnight. Dominic stepped forward, his presence immediately dominating the small space. Your friend is coming with me. She'll be safe. Lena didn't back down, despite the tremor I could see in her hands. And I'm just supposed to take the word of a man who has people killed for a living. I winced at her bluntness, but Dominic's expression remained impassive. Your loyalty is admirable, he said softly. Emma is lucky to have you, but right now, the safest place for her is with me. Emma? Lena looked at me, her eyes pleading. You don't have to go anywhere with him. We can call the police. The police can't help with this, I interrupted, moving to take her hands in mine. Lena, I'm pregnant. It's his. The color drained from her face. Oh my God. I need to go with him, I continued, squeezing her hands. But I'll be okay. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise. She pulled me into a fierce hug, whispering in my ear. If you need help, if you need to get away from him, call me, anytime. I'll find a way. I nodded against her shoulder, fighting back tears. When we separated, Dominic was watching us with an unreadable expression. We need to leave, he said again, more urgently this time. His bodyguard appeared in the doorway, tension evident in his massive frame. 3 minutes, boss, the man said gruffly. Car's ready out back. Dominic nodded, placing a hand on the small of my back as he guided me toward the door. I grabbed my coat and purse, pausing at the threshold to look back at Lena. I'll call you, I promised again. She nodded, tears in her eyes. You'd better. The hallway outside my apartment was empty except for Dominic's bodyguard, who led the way to the service stairs rather than the elevator. We descended quickly, emerging into the alley behind my building, where a sleek black SUV idled, its windows tinted so dark they looked opaque. Rain pounded against my face as Dominic hustled me across the wet pavement. The bodyguard opened the rear door, and Dominic guided me inside before sliding in beside me. The interior was luxurious. Soft leather seats, the subtle scent of expensive cologne, a privacy partition separating us from the driver. As the car pulled away, I stared out the window at my apartment building shrinking in the distance. The reality of what was happening finally hit me full force. I was leaving my life behind, my tiny apartment, my independence, my illusion of normalcy, and entering Dominic's world of wealth, power, and danger. Where are we going? I asked, my voice small in the quiet of the car. Somewhere safe, Dominic replied, his hand finding mine in the darkness. One of my properties outside the city. Not your penthouse? He shook his head. Too exposed. Too many people know about it. The implication sent a fresh wave of fear through me. Are we in danger? Right now. Dominic's thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, the gesture surprisingly soothing. There was unusual activity around your building tonight. Could be nothing. Could be someone watching. I don't take chances. Especially not with you. Why me? The question that had been burning in my mind finally escaped. You could have any woman in the world. Why come looking for me, even before you knew about the baby? He was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost vulnerable. From the moment I saw you at Velvet. Something about you called to me. You moved through that world of false glamour like you weren't part of it. Like you were just passing through on your way to somewhere better. His grip on my hand tightened slightly. When you disappeared that morning, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a child. Fear. Not the calculated awareness of danger that keeps me alive in my world, but raw, primal fear that something precious had slipped through my fingers. His words washed over me, both terrifying and exhilarating. To be wanted so desperately by a man like Dominic, a man who could have anything, anyone, was intoxicating. But the possessiveness in his voice reminded me of what he was, a man accustomed to owning things, to controlling his world down to the smallest detail. And now, I whispered, my free hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. Is it just about the baby? Dominic turned to look at me fully, his eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. The child is a miracle I never dared hope for, he said softly. But no, Emma. It's not just about the baby. The car slowed, turning onto a private road that wound through dense trees. Through the rain-streaked windows, I could make out the silhouette of a large house in the distance, lights glowing warmly against the stormy night. We're here, Dominic said, releasing my hand as the car came to a stop. I peered through the window at what could only be described as a mansion, a sprawling stone structure with soaring windows and a covered entrance where 2 more suited men waited, unmoved by the pounding rain. What is this place? I asked, my voice barely audible. Home, Dominic replied simply. For now. The door beside me opened, and one of the waiting men held out an umbrella. Dominic exited first, then reached back to take my hand, helping me from the car. His grip was firm, protective as he led me toward the entrance. As we crossed the threshold into the warmly lit foyer, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a point of no return. Behind these walls, I would no longer be just Emma Clark, struggling student and waitress. I would be something else entirely, the woman carrying Dominic Russo's child. His possession, his weakness, his family. The mansion's interior was a study in restrained luxury, cream-colored walls adorned with tasteful artwork, dark hardwood floors covered with plush rugs, and furniture that looked both beautiful and comfortable. It wasn't the cold, ostentatious display of wealth I had expected, but something warmer, more livable. A woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair and Dominic's same penetrating eyes appeared in the foyer. Her expression a mixture of surprise and curiosity as she took me in. She wore a simple black dress and a single strand of pearls, her bearing regal despite her petite frame. "Dominic," she said, her voice carrying a hint of an Italian accent. "I wasn't expecting you tonight." "Change of plans, Mama," Dominic replied, his tone softening in a way I hadn't heard before. He placed a hand on the small of my back, guiding me forward. "This is Emma. She'll be staying with us for a while." The woman, his mother, studied me with unnerving intensity. I suddenly felt acutely aware of my disheveled appearance, hair thrown into a messy ponytail, face still blotchy from crying, wearing nothing but leggings and an oversized t-shirt under my hastily thrown-on coat. "Emma," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "Welcome to our home." "Thank you," I managed, my voice small in the expansive space. "I'm sorry for the intrusion." A smile touched her lips, not quite reaching her eyes. "Any guest of my son's is welcome here." She turned to Dominic. "I'll have Rosa prepare a room." "That won't be necessary," Dominic said quietly. "Emma will stay in my suite." His mother's eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication of her surprise. "I see." Her gaze flicked to me, then back to her son, some silent communication passing between them. "I'll have some tea sent up then. You both look like you could use it." She disappeared through an archway, leaving me alone with Dominic in the foyer. One of his men brought in my duffel bag, setting it down quietly before withdrawing. "Your mother lives here?" I asked, trying to process this new piece of information. "This is her house," Dominic replied, taking my coat and hanging it in a nearby closet. "I grew up here." The revelation surprised me. I'd imagined Dominic living in sleek modern spaces, penthouses with views of the city. Not a family home in the woods with his mother. It humanized him in a way I wasn't prepared for. "Come," he said, taking my bag in one hand and my elbow in the other. "You need to rest." He led me up a sweeping staircase to the second floor, down a long hallway lined with closed doors. At the end was a set of double doors, which he pushed open to reveal a spacious suite. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, flanked by large windows draped in heavy curtains. A sitting area with a fireplace occupied another corner, and 2 doors presumably led to a bathroom and closet. "This is your room?" I asked, taking in the space. Like the rest of the house, it was luxurious but tasteful. Dark woods, rich fabrics, muted colors. "Our room for now." He set my bag on a bench at the foot of the bed. "The bathroom is through there if you want a shower. You'll find everything you need." The thought of washing away the stress of the night was tempting. I nodded, moving toward the bathroom door, but paused when I reached it. "Dominic, I need some answers." He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. A rare gesture of weariness. "I know you do, and I'll give them to you. But first, take some time to yourself. Shower, change, collect your thoughts. I need to speak with my security team." Part of me wanted to insist on answers now, but exhaustion was starting to settle into my bones, making my limbs feel heavy. I nodded again, slipping into the bathroom and closing the door behind me. The bathroom was as luxurious as the rest of the suite. Marble floors and countertops, a glass-walled shower big enough for 3 people, and a deep soaking tub by a window that likely had a beautiful view in daylight. I stripped off my clothes, catching sight of my reflection in the mirror. My hand went instinctively to my still flat stomach. Somewhere in there was a life, half me, half him. The thought was still too enormous to fully comprehend. I stepped into the shower, letting the hot water cascade over my tired muscles. As steam filled the space, I allowed myself to finally break down, silent tears mixing with the shower spray. Everything was happening too fast. The pregnancy, Dominic's reappearance in my life, this sudden evacuation to his family home. Just that morning, I'd been a normal girl with normal problems. Now I was carrying the child of one of the most dangerous men in the city, sheltering in his mansion, about to sleep in his bed. By the time I stepped out of the shower, my skin pink and my fingertips wrinkled, I felt marginally more human. I wrapped myself in one of the plush towels, realizing too late that I hadn't brought clean clothes with me. As if sensing my dilemma, there was a soft knock at the door. "Emma?" Dominic's voice came through, I've left some things for you on the bed." "Thank you," I called back, waiting until I heard his footsteps retreat, before cracking the door open. On the bed lay a silk nightgown and matching robe in a soft sage green, along with a pair of underwear that still had tags attached. Next to them was a steaming cup of tea and a plate with some toast and fruit. The sight of the food made my stomach growl, reminding me I hadn't eaten since lunch. I dressed quickly, the silk cool and soothing against my skin, then sat cross-legged on the bed, sipping the tea and nibbling at the toast. Outside, rain continued to batter the windows, but here I was warm, comfortable, and for the moment at least, safe. The door opened, and Dominic entered, having changed into dark jeans and a simple black sweater that clung to his broad shoulders. The casual clothes made him look younger, more approachable, though the intensity in his eyes remained unchanged. "Better?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over me in the nightgown. I nodded, setting the teacup down. "Thank you for the clothes. They were my sister's," he said, moving to sit in a chair near the bed. "She keeps things here for when she visits." Another revelation. A sister. A family beyond just his mother. The image of Dominic Russo, family man, continued to complicate my understanding of him. "You have a sister?" I asked. "Sophia. She's younger by 5 years." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "She's a lawyer in New York. Legitimate practice," he added, as if anticipating my question. I drew my knees up to my chest, wrapping my arms around them. "Your mother seemed surprised to see me." "My mother is surprised by very little," Dominic replied dryly. "But yes, I don't typically bring women to the family home." The implication hung in the air between us. I was different. Special, perhaps. Or simply a complication he didn't know how to handle elsewhere. "Why did we have to leave my apartment so suddenly?" I asked, unable to keep the question contained any longer. Were we really in danger? Dominic was quiet for a moment, his expression contemplative, as if deciding how much to tell me. "There's been increased interest in my personal life lately," he finally said. "Rivals looking for weaknesses, for leverage. And I'm a weakness." It wasn't a question. His eyes met mine, midnight dark and intense. "You're carrying my child. That makes you the most precious thing in my world. And yes, potentially my greatest vulnerability." The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver through me. There was something primal about the way he claimed ownership, not just of the baby, but of me. I should have been frightened, should have recoiled from the implicit threat of being owned. Instead, I felt an answering heat unfurl in my belly. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Now you rest." He rose from the chair, approaching the bed with the fluid grace of a predator. "Tomorrow we'll figure out the logistics. Your classes, your job, your medical care." "And us?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "What are we, Dominic?" He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "What do you want us to be, Emma?" "I don't know," I admitted. "This is all happening so fast. Yesterday you were someone I was trying to forget. Today you're—" I trailed off, unable to define what he was to me now. "The father of your child," he finished for me, his voice low. "The man who will protect you both with his life. The man who hasn't stopped thinking about you for 2 months. His hand moved to cup my cheek, thumb tracing my lower lip. "I know you're afraid, Emma, of me, of my world. But I need you to understand something." His eyes held mine, unflinching. "Whatever you've heard about me, whatever you think you know, there is nothing I wouldn't do to keep you safe. Both of you." The intensity of his words, the absolute certainty in his voice made my breath catch. He meant it. This man, who commanded an empire built on violence and fear, was offering me his protection, his resources, perhaps even his heart. "I don't know if I can be a part of your world," I whispered, leaning into his touch despite myself. "Then I'll change my world." The simplicity with which he said it, as if rearranging his entire existence was nothing more than a minor inconvenience, left me speechless. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the moment. He checked it with a frown, then stood. "I have to take this," Try to get some sleep. I nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted I truly was. As Dominic moved toward the door, a question bubbled up from the fear I'd been trying to suppress. Dominic, I called, making him pause. If there are people watching me, does that mean my friend is in danger? Lena, his expression softened slightly. I've already arranged for security to keep an eye on your apartment building. Your friend will be safe. Relief washed through me. Despite everything, Dominic had thought of Lena's safety without me even asking. It was a small kindness, but one that meant more than he could know. After he left, I slipped under the covers, the sheets cool and silky against my skin. The bed smelled faintly of Dominic, sandalwood and something darker, more masculine. It was an oddly comforting scent, one that made me feel protected despite the uncertainty surrounding me. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew, I was waking to movement beside me. Dominic had slid into bed, keeping a careful distance between us. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, I could make out his profile. Strong jaw, straight nose, long lashes casting shadows on his cheeks. Sorry, he murmured, sensing I was awake. I didn't mean to wake you. It's okay, I whispered back, suddenly acutely aware of his presence, of the intimacy of sharing a bed. We lay in silence for a few moments, both of us staring up at the ceiling. Then Dominic spoke, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear him. I never thought I would have a family of my own. The vulnerability in those words made my chest tighten. I turned on my side to face him, finding him already looking at me. Why not? I asked softly. My life. It doesn't lend itself to family, to attachments. His hand found mine under the covers, fingers intertwining. My father built his empire through fear and blood, and I inherited his enemies along with his power. Every relationship becomes a potential weakness, a target. Is that why you've never married? The question felt too personal, too prying. But in the darkness of the room, boundaries seemed to blur. A sad smile touched his lips. That, and I never found someone I wanted to chain to my complicated existence. His thumb traced patterns on my palm. Until you. The implication in those two words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. I didn't know how to respond, didn't know if I wanted the burden of being the exception to Dominic Russo's rules. We barely know each other, I said instead. Then let's change that. His voice was low, earnest. Ask me anything, Emma. I want you to know me, the real me, not just what you've heard. The offer was tempting, a glimpse behind the mask of the notorious crime boss, but as I opened my mouth to ask one of the 100 questions swirling in my mind, a wave of nausea hit me without warning. Morning sickness, arriving with impeccable timing. I bolted upright, clapping a hand over my mouth. Dominic reacted instantly, helping me to the bathroom where I made it to the toilet just in time. As I retched miserably, I felt him gather my hair back with gentle hands, his other hand rubbing soothing circles on my back. It was such an intimate, caring gesture that tears sprang to my eyes. When the nausea finally subsided, I sat back on my heels, mortified. I'm sorry, I whispered, unable to look at him. Don't be. He handed me a damp washcloth, then helped me to my feet. This is part of it, isn't it? Part of carrying our child, our child. The way he said it, with reverence, with wonder, made something warm unfurl in my chest. He guided me back to bed, tucking the covers around me with surprising tenderness. Try to sleep, he murmured, brushing a kiss against my forehead. I'll be right here if you need me. As I drifted back toward sleep, I felt Dominic's hand come to rest protectively over my stomach, over the tiny life we had created together. In that moment, despite all the fear and uncertainty, one thing became clear. Whatever happened next, I was no longer alone. Morning arrived with soft light filtering through a gap in the curtains, painting a golden stripe across the unfamiliar bed. For a moment, I forgot where I was, reaching instinctively for my phone to check the time. Instead, my fingers brushed against warm skin. Dominic. He lay beside me, his breathing deep and even, one arm still draped protectively over my waist. In sleep, The hard lines of his face softened, making him look younger, more vulnerable. This close, I could see details I'd missed before. A small scar at his temple, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his dark lashes fanned against his cheeks. It was disconcerting to see someone so dangerous looking so peaceful. Carefully, I slipped out from under his arm, padding silently to the bathroom. My reflection in the mirror looked different somehow. My eyes wider, my face paler. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to ground myself in this new reality. When I emerged, Dominic was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, his phone in hand. He looked up when I entered, his eyes tracking my movement with that focused intensity I was beginning to recognize. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting his phone aside. "Better than last night," I replied, self-consciously tugging at the hem of the silk nightgown. "No nausea so far," he nodded, rising to his feet with fluid grace. "There are clothes for you in the closet. My sister keeps a variety of sizes here." He moved toward me, stopping just close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Once you're dressed, come downstairs. We have things to discuss." The businesslike tone was a stark contrast to the tenderness he'd shown last night. I wondered which was the real Dominic Russo, the gentleman who had held my hair back as I was sick, or this controlled, commanding figure who expected immediate compliance. Perhaps they both were. After he left, I found the closet stocked with women's clothing in several sizes. I selected jeans and a soft gray sweater that fit well enough, then made my way downstairs, following the scent of coffee and freshly baked bread. The kitchen was warm and surprisingly homey, a large space with stone countertops and a massive island where Dominic sat with his mother, both of them nursing cups of coffee. They looked up as I entered, their conversation halting abruptly. "Good morning, Emma," Dominic's mother said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you, Mrs. Russo," I replied, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. "Please call me Lucia." She gestured to an empty chair beside Dominic. "Sit. Eat something. You need your strength." The casual reference to my condition confirmed my suspicion that Dominic had already told her about the pregnancy. I slid into the indicated chair, accepting the cup of herbal tea she placed before me. "I took the liberty of scheduling an appointment with our family doctor for this afternoon," Dominic said, sliding a plate of toast and fruit toward me. "Dr. Marino is discreet and trustworthy. He'll come here." "You told your mother," I said quietly, not touching the food. "Of course he did," Lucia interjected before Dominic could respond. "You're carrying a Russo. That makes you family." The matter-of-fact way she said it, like my integration into their world was already a foregone conclusion, sent a ripple of unease through me. "I haven't decided anything yet," I said, looking directly at Dominic. "About us, about arrangements." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The baby's safety isn't negotiable, Emma." "Neither is my autonomy," I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. "I can't just disappear into your world, Dominic. I have classes, friends, a life." Lucia rose gracefully from her chair. "I'll leave you two to discuss this privately," she said, giving Dominic's shoulder a brief squeeze as she passed. "Remember, son, more flies with honey than vinegar." Once she was gone, Dominic let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. "You're right," he said finally. "I've been overbearing." The admission startled me. I hadn't expected him to concede the point so easily. "I'm not used to considering another person's wishes," he continued, his voice softening. "In my world, I give orders, and they're followed without question. But this," he gestured between us, "this is different." "Because of the baby," I said, unable to keep the hint of bitterness from my voice. "Not just because of the baby," he replied, eyes locking with mine. "Because it's you, Emma." The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it, frowning slightly. "We have a visitor," he said, rising from his chair. "Someone I think you should meet." Curious despite myself, I followed him to the front of the house. A sleek black car had pulled up in the circular driveway, and from it emerged an elegant woman in her early 30s, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, wearing a perfectly tailored pantsuit. "Sophia," Dominic greeted as she entered. That was fast. "You tell me you've got a pregnant girlfriend hidden away at Mama's, and you expect me to wait?" She brushed past him, her sharp gaze landing on me. "So you're Emma." I straightened instinctively under her scrutiny. "And you're Dominic's sister." A smile tugged at her lips. "She's got spine, Dom. I like her already." She extended a manicured hand. "Sophia Russo. Apparently I'm going to be an aunt." I shook her hand, finding her grip firm and confident. "It's nice to meet you. Let's save the niceties for later," she said, glancing between me and Dominic. "Right now we need to talk strategy." Dominic led us to a study off the main hall. A masculine space with leather furniture and bookshelves lining the walls. Sophia perched on the edge of a desk, while Dominic and I took seats in opposing armchairs. "Emma believes I'm being too controlling about her situation," Dominic said without preamble. Sophia snorted. "Imagine that." Her eyes, so like her brother's, fixed on me. "Let me guess. He told you to drop everything and move in with him, with no discussion about how this affects your life." I nodded, surprised by her accurate assessment. "Classic Dominic," she said, rolling her eyes. "Always commanding, never asking." "The safety of Emma and my child is not up for debate," Dominic replied, his voice taking on that dangerous edge I remembered from Velvet. "No one's saying it is," Sophia countered, seemingly unaffected by his tone. "But there are ways to ensure her safety without completely dismantling her life." She turned to me. "What do you do, Emma? Besides working at that club?" "I'm a student," I replied. "Business administration, junior year. I work at Velvet to pay tuition and rent." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "Finals coming up, I assume? And after that, summer classes? Internship?" "Finals next week," I confirmed. "I was planning to take summer classes to graduate early, and I've applied for an internship at Lambert Financial, all of which can still happen," Sophia said, looking pointedly at her brother with proper security arrangements. Dominic's expression remained impassive, but I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. "And how do you propose we manage that, without exposing Emma to risk?" "The same way we've managed security for our family for years," Sophia replied. "Discreet bodyguards, secure transportation, regular check-ins." She turned back to me. "It wouldn't be complete freedom, Emma. There would have to be protocols, precautions. But you could continue your education, maintain your friendships, have something resembling a normal life." Hope flickered in my chest. It sounded like a compromise I could live with. Safer than trying to navigate this alone, but not the gilded cage I'd feared Dominic would insist on. "And where would she live?" Dominic asked, his voice deliberately neutral. "Her current apartment is too exposed, too vulnerable. We have plenty of secure properties," Sophia said. "The Riverside complex has excellent security, and it's close to her campus." I looked between them, feeling like a child whose parents were discussing her future. "Don't I get a say in this?" They both turned to me, Sophia with an apologetic smile, Dominic with an unreadable expression. "Of course you do," Sophia said. "In fact, your input is essential. What do you want, Emma? Practically speaking, what arrangement would make you feel both safe and independent?" The question caught me off guard. No one had asked what I wanted since this whirlwind began. "I want to finish school," I said slowly, organizing my thoughts. "I want to see my friends, especially Lena. I paused, one hand unconsciously moving to my still flat stomach. "I want this baby to have a chance at a normal life, away from danger and violence." Dominic's expression softened at that last part, something like pain flashing in his eyes. "And me?" he asked quietly. "What place do I have in this vision of yours?" The vulnerability in his question made my chest tighten. This powerful, dangerous man was asking where he fit in my life, in our child's life. It was a question I didn't have a simple answer for. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "I barely know you, Dominic, the real you, not just the reputation. But I want our child to know their father." I met his gaze directly. "I'm just not sure what that looks like with your profession." Something shifted in Dominic's expression, a resolve forming behind his eyes. What if that wasn't an obstacle? Sophia made a small sound of surprise. Dom. He held up a hand, silencing her without taking his eyes off me. What if I could ensure that our child never has to worry about the dangers of my world? That you never have to worry? How? I asked, a mixture of hope and skepticism coloring my voice. I've been considering options for some time, he said carefully. Ways to legitimize my business interests, to extract myself from certain entanglements. His gaze intensified. It wouldn't happen overnight, but it could be done. For you. For our family. The weight of what he was suggesting left me speechless. Dominic Rousseau, walking away from his empire, his power. For me? For a child he'd only learned about yesterday? The silence that followed Dominic's declaration was broken only by Sophia's incredulous laugh. You're serious, she said, studying her brother's face. You're actually serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, Dominic replied, his eyes never leaving mine. I struggled to find my voice, the magnitude of his offer overwhelming me. Dominic, I can't ask you to give up everything you've built. You didn't ask, he said softly. I'm offering. There's a difference. Sophia pushed herself off the desk, pacing the length of the study. It won't be simple, Dom. The family has interest everywhere, legitimate and otherwise. Untangling yourself will take time, careful planning. I know. He finally broke eye contact with me to look at his sister. That's why I need your help, your legal expertise, your connections. She stopped pacing, her expression softening. You know I'll help you, whatever it takes. The exchange between them revealed layers of their relationship I hadn't expected. A deep trust, a shared understanding that went beyond their blood connection. In that moment, I glimpsed a different side of Dominic Rousseau. Not the feared crime boss, but a brother who valued his sister's counsel, who trusted her completely. What would it mean? I asked, drawing their attention back to me. This transition? Dominic leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. It would mean gradually shifting all our interests to legitimate businesses only, using the capital we've accumulated to invest in legal ventures, cutting ties with certain associates. His expression darkened slightly. Some of those separations would be complicated. Dangerous, you mean? I translated. He didn't deny it. There would be resistance. Not everyone would understand or support the change. Which is why we'd need to be strategic, Sophia interjected. Start with the peripheral operations, the ones easiest to divest. Build a narrative that makes business sense, so it doesn't look like weakness or surrender. I tried to process what they were saying, the enormity of the undertaking they were discussing so matter-of-factly. How long would it take? A year, minimum, Sophia replied. Realistically, closer to 2 or 3 to do it properly, without leaving loose ends. 2 or 3 years. Our child would be a toddler by then. I placed a protective hand over my stomach, trying to imagine what those years would look like. Pregnancy, birth, early motherhood, all while Dominic extracted himself from his criminal empire. The danger wouldn't disappear overnight. If anything, it might increase temporarily as he made his intentions clear. During that time, I said slowly, would we, the baby and I, be safe? I would dedicate my best men to your security, Dominic said, his voice taking on that steely quality I was beginning to recognize as his non-negotiable tone. You would be the most protected woman in the city, but not the most free, I countered. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. There would have to be compromises, yes, certain precautions, restrictions, but temporary ones, Sophia added, with a clear end goal in sight. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry had been how to afford summer classes. Now I was discussing security details and the dismantling of a criminal empire with 2 people who spoke about such things as casually as others might discuss vacation plans. I need time, I said finally, to process all of this, to think. To my surprise, Dominic nodded. Of course. Take whatever time you need. He rose from his chair, crossing the room to kneel before me, taking my hands in his. But know this, Emma. Whatever you decide about us, about our future together, I will always protect you and our child. That is non-negotiable. The intensity in his eyes, the absolute certainty in his voice, made my heart race. This man, who commanded fear and respect throughout the city, was on his knees before me, making promises that went beyond protection. He was offering to reshape his entire life, to walk away from power and wealth for the chance to build something with me. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. I should give you two some privacy, Sophia said, moving toward the door. She paused beside me, squeezing my shoulder gently. For what it's worth, I've never seen my brother like this. Not with anyone. After she left, Dominic remained kneeling before me, his thumbs tracing circles on the backs of my hands. The vulnerability in his posture, in his touch, moved something deep within me. Why? I whispered. Why would you give up everything for me, for us? You barely know me. A sad smile touched his lips. I know enough. I know you're brave. You left my bed without a backward glance when you discovered who I was. I know you're determined. Working nights at a club you hate to put yourself through school. I know you're loyal. The way you worried about your friend's safety even in the middle of your own crisis. His words washed over me, each one striking with unexpected precision. He had been watching me, learning me, even when I thought I'd successfully vanished from his life. And I know, he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, that from the moment I saw you at Velvet, something in me recognized something in you. Like my soul had been waiting for yours. The raw emotion in his voice, in his eyes, made my breath catch. It should have sounded like a line, a practiced seduction. Instead, it felt like the most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice small. Not just of your world, of the danger. I'm scared of how fast this is happening, of how intense this feels, of what I feel for you, despite everything. His grip on my hands tightened. What do you feel for me, Emma? I closed my eyes, searching for the truth beneath the fear and confusion. Attraction, fascination, terror. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. Hope. Something fierce and tender flashed across his face. Slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, he leaned forward, pressing his lips to mine in a kiss that was surprisingly gentle. His hands came up to cradle my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks with reverent care. When we separated, his forehead resting against mine, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't expected. Whatever lay ahead, danger, complications, compromises, I wanted to face it with him. I'm not promising forever right now, I said softly. But I'm willing to try, to see if we can build something real, something good for our child. A smile transformed his face, making him look younger, almost boyish in his joy. That's all I ask, a chance. He helped me to my feet, his hand finding mine as naturally as if we'd been together for years instead of mere moments. As we left the study, Dominic's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression growing serious. The doctor will be here in an hour, he said, tucking the phone away. After that, I'd like to take you somewhere. Where? I asked, curiosity piqued. A surprise, he replied, a hint of mystery in his smile. Something to help you understand me better. The doctor's visit was brief but thorough. Dr. Marino, a distinguished older gentleman with kind eyes and a gentle manner, confirmed my pregnancy, around 6 weeks along, and assured me that despite my morning sickness, everything appeared normal. He prescribed prenatal vitamins, recommended dietary changes, and scheduled a follow-up for the first ultrasound in 2 weeks. Throughout the examination, Dominic remained by my side, his expression alternating between fierce protectiveness and wonder as the doctor discussed our baby's development. It was surreal to watch this notorious crime boss hanging on every word about embryonic growth and fetal milestones, asking surprisingly knowledgeable questions about pregnancy and maternal health. After the doctor left, Dominic led me to the garage where a different car awaited, not the imposing SUV from last night, but a sleek silver Aston Martin. Where are we going? I asked again, as he held the passenger door for me. You said you wanted to know me, he replied, sliding into the driver's seat. The real me, not just the reputation. I'm taking you to where it all began. We drove for nearly an hour, the mansion's wooded seclusion giving way to suburbs, then to a distinctly Italian neighborhood in the city's east side. Dominic parked outside a modest bakery with Russo's painted in fading gold letters on the window. My grandfather's bakery, he explained, leading me inside. The first legitimate business in our family. The interior was warm and inviting, with the heavenly scent of fresh bread and pastries filling the air. Behind the counter, an elderly man with Dominic's eyes looked up, his weathered face breaking into a wide smile. Dominic, he called, coming around the counter to embrace him. 2 visits in 1 week. What's the occasion? Uncle Marco, Dominic replied, returning the embrace with obvious affection. I wanted Emma to meet you, to see this place. Marco turned to me, studying my face with keen interest. Emma, he repeated, taking my hand in his flour-dusted one. Welcome to Russo's. As Dominic led me through the bakery and up a narrow staircase to the apartment above, he told me the story of his family, how his grandfather had started with just this bakery, how his father had expanded their interests, not always legally, and how Dominic had inherited both the legitimate business and its shadowy counterpart at just 22 when his father was killed by rivals. This place, he said, showing me around the simple apartment where he'd spent his childhood summers, is where I want to return, not literally, but in spirit. Honest work, family, legacy. In the small living room, he showed me photos of himself as a boy, flour-covered and grinning beside his grandfather. The joy in young Dominic's eyes, the innocence, made my chest ache for what had been lost when he was thrust into his father's world. This is who I was, he said softly, tracing the edge of the frame, before the empire, before the power. This is who I want our child to know. In that moment, looking at the boy in the photograph and the man beside me, I understood what he was offering. Not just protection, not just security, but redemption. A return to something purer, something that had been buried beneath years of violence and power. It won't be easy, I said, taking his hand, walking away from what you've built. No, he agreed, but the most important things never are. He placed a hand gently on my stomach, his eyes meeting mine with solemn intensity. This, you, our child, a life without shadows. This is worth fighting for. As we stood there in that humble apartment above a bakery, I felt the first real stirrings of hope. The path ahead would be dangerous, complicated, filled with compromises and sacrifices. But for the first time since seeing those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I could envision a future that wasn't defined by fear, a future where our child would know both parents, where Dominic could leave behind the violence of his past, where we could build something legitimate and lasting together. It wouldn't happen overnight. There would be resistance, threats, perhaps even violence as Dominic extracted himself from his criminal enterprises. For a time, our lives would be constrained by security measures and caution. But on the other side lay a promise, freedom, honesty, family. I'm still scared, I admitted, leaning into his embrace. But I'm not running anymore. His arms tightened around me, his lips pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. That's all I ask, he murmured against my skin. Stay with me. Let me prove I can be the man you and our child deserve. As we left the bakery hand in hand, stepping into the sunlight of a new day, I knew we were beginning a journey that would test us both. A journey from darkness into light, from fear into hope, from isolation into family. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, bound by something stronger than fear, more enduring than power, something like love.